Harvard is raising funds in rupee funds with tax deduction, which is allowed under the new NEP, and so India is funding Harvard. And Harvard has a footprint here. They are doing a lot of research in India, a lot of database gathering in India, a lot of classification, all of that stuff is going on in India. So Harvard is infiltrated in a very big way. It is pretty serious. And it's not only Harvard, there are others also. And they have their branches in Ashoka and Kriya University and all these Godrej labs and TIS and Azim Premji's foundation involved. So there is a ecosystem that they are head of a whole ecosystem. That is worrisome.
I have asked a lot of Marxist historian even, is there any caste war in India? See, you can't have 1,500 years of oppression without somebody, coming out and fighting it out, and it's absurd actually that one group of people were oppressed for. In Europe, you see every 50 year, 40 year, there were a lot of these revolts and.
Though the West has been manufacturing atrocity literature, which you pointed out in your book, the fact is the level of atrocities against so-called Dalits has been far lower than before. In fact, they see that for the first time, they are actually getting a ruler who is not coming from a privileged elite. And in many of the states, it is the case. So they are actually merging into the broader stream of Dharma quietly without fanfare.
There is also, like Rajiv ji said, there are other universities also competing for the space, like MIT. MIT has a whole economic research on India. MIT is not bringing technology to India, they're bringing this kind of woke economics to India. And over there now Gates comes from the side and starts funding Kriya University to find out female labor participation rates are very low, especially among upper caste women. Why is that? Because again, to show it's patriarchy.
Hello and welcome to this conversation on Rajiv Malhotra and Vijaya Viswanathan's new book, Snakes in the Ganga. Actually, there are snakes everywhere, not just in the Ganga. We are sitting quite close to the Canary, and I think there are some here as well. So, to set the conversation of Rajiv, and we'll also be joined by Professor Vaidyanathan, formerly of Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, who will join us shortly. So, for the first thing, the main thing I got out of this book was that it helped me connect the dots. I have been observing many things happening in India, and I have even written about them. But I was like a frog in the well. I couldn't see outside and what is happening outside. This book connects the dot between wokeism or whatever was happening ideologically in US campuses and what is happening in our own JNU and other places. So that was a real revelation for me. I said, look, I think I have been able to see this only like a horse sees the front of the road, just a little bit. So this was a very big thing, the ability to connect all the dots between what's happening globally and here. So, Rajiv, if I ask you first thing, how exactly and why exactly did you completely overturn your earlier Breaking India thesis and this is a completely new approach? What is the difference?
So actually, it's not just connecting the dots with foreign universities and JNU, but also Indian Supreme Court is one of the dots. And the Indian billionaires who are funding all this stuff. Yeah. So I think this American, critical race theory and also the theoretical framework, how it's turned into critical caste theory. And then how critical caste theory plays into this whole caste system here and has a life of its own. So this is a huge international thing that we have uncovered. Now the difference between this and Breaking India 1.0 is quite a lot. Breaking India 1.0 was focusing on the problems that are being created for the Indian underclass in the villages, poor people, not the elites in Delhi and Ashoka University and Bombay industrialists and all of that, but the poor people in the villages. And the conduit was NGOs. So now the conduit is not simply NGOs, some of the NGOs are still there. And the target is not the poor people. The target are the elites, the sons and daughters of very rich people who go to places like Harvard and bring this ideology back, who go to private universities in India and bring it back, policy makers in think tanks like Niti Aayog, industrialists themselves, Supreme Court. So I think what has now happened is that Harvard, given its status as sort of a very global Vishwa Guru, we call it, that Indians have accepted as the Vishwa Guru, has a special place in the hearts and minds of the ruling class of India, the ruling elites. So while a villager might not know what is Harvard, so it would probably not be the right place to target the villagers, but it is the right place to target all the who's who of India who would love to be in the Harvard Club. So once Harvard decides to start exporting this, they can get to the power structure of India for the first time.
Right. The other thing I found was that the lot of Indian elites earlier were not looking so much in terms of what was happening outside, but now a substantially large number of people have actually gone there, got themselves educated, and then they have also set up businesses there. Whole of Silicon Valley is full of Indians and things. So now the attack is coming even on Silicon Valley, I believe, and Indians are trying to be indoctrinated there. So what is exactly is the threat? Because it's not just Indians in India, but Indians abroad also are going to face some kind of attacks from the new ideologies being flowered in Harvard and elsewhere.
Yes. So what has happened is that part of this critical caste theory, which is derived from critical race theory, and this is a Harvard product, we've mentioned the people in Harvard who are doing it. Part of it is that the caste is like race, and therefore American laws of racism, which are very tough, criminal laws, should be applied to caste abuse in the United States. This is the first time. So Cisco in Silicon Valley got a lawsuit that you have caste abuse and therefore racism, and therefore all these American laws have to apply to you. And Cisco, of course, defended it, but the thing is going on. And all of Silicon Valley is very scared because it could happen to anybody. Since there are a lot of upper caste people working in Silicon Valley, all it takes is somebody to raise this issue legally, and then they have to defend themselves. And it's also not only a litigation issue, it's also an issue before the public opinion, because to be called a racist is a very bad thing in the eyes of anybody in the US. So what has happened is now Indians in Silicon Valley are on the defensive. This hadn't happened ever before. So this is a very clever way to break the back of the IT industry. And so the tech people in Silicon Valley have not had the ability to defend themselves because nobody has done this work. And one of the goals of this work is to educate our own Silicon Valley people on how to defend themselves, where the problem is coming from, whom to stop funding, and how to answer back when they are put on the defensive. And we received so many emails from Indians working in Microsoft and Google and all these places, wanting to know how do you respond when somebody comes and says, we're going to be having a workshop on caste sensitivity.
Yeah. So one of the things I found, Vijaya, is that it's not just the elite and the students who are woke, but increasingly our judiciary is also talking the same language. I think I recently saw a video in which you quoted our next Chief Justice, who will take over from November, saying exactly the same things that the Harvard's caste theorists have been saying. What is the connection? And is it that we are going to get all our wisdom on caste from Harvard? Or are we going to get it from Professor Vaidyanathan, who is a thing on caste? But I'll first you, Vijaya.
Okay, excellent question. It's definitely seems like that we are getting all our gyan on caste from the West. Professor Vaidyanathan will probably be one of those people who are cancelled at Harvard because his voice will not be, looked at. Now, it's gone into the judiciary. In fact, a judge, a very senior judge in Karnataka said that if this has gone to the judiciary, if these woke ideas of critical race theory have gone into the judiciary, it means it has permeated the entire system. It has permeated the government, business houses, and in fact, most things get to the judiciary at the very end. So if it means that the judiciary is saying these things, essentially, the canary in the coal mine is the entire, all systems, all institutions, all governmental agencies are all following suit. So that's what it essentially means. So Harvard indeed has that much power and control, and one of the things we try and show in this book is the scholarship behind all this, because most of the time we tend to ignore it and say somebody is saying something in Harvard, what's it for in it for us? But in this book we show you how it affects the average person on the street. We can't afford to ignore this kind of scholarship as some small group at the fringe doing these things. So it goes to show how it affects the average Indian on the street.
Right. So critical caste theory has grown from fringe to mainstream in American academia, right? So while none of us is going to defend any caste-based violence or atrocity, obviously caste is not just about hierarchy and atrocity. there is a certain element in it, which actually the fact that over 2000 years we have tried to do something about it, thinking there must something wrong with it, and yet it has survived. What is that vital element that actually keeps it going still, and is it ever going to be addressed in a way where you make sure there is no injustice and yet keep the good parts of it? What do you think, Professor Vaidyanathan?
Actually, I have written a book also. It's a major social capital. People don't seem to recognize that actually. It provides a huge amount of cushion in terms of relationship, in terms of conducting your affairs, business, and a lot of sampradayas, methods of doing it and other thing. And it's not something, rigid or hierarchical. This was 1881. The British did the first census, where they created these fourfold categories. Incidentally, prior to that, there is no evidence to suggest this hierarchy of, Brahmin, Kshatriya and other things. That was the creation of the British in 1881, first census. Prior to that, there is nothing. They quote some Purusha Sukta where, the god is supposed to have told that the Brahmins came from head and the Shudras came from feet, but that's not a very convincing thing, because feet is actually worshipped in our context. If you go to Vaishnav temple, they give you the Kridam. That's actually the feet of Lord Vishnu. So that's not the. After that, there is nothing. And people talk about caste oppression and caste. I have asked a lot of Marxist historian even, is there any caste war in India? See, you can't have 1500 years of oppression without somebody, coming out and fighting it out, and it's absurd actually that one group of people were oppressed for. In Europe, you see every 50 years, 40 years, there were a lot of these revolts, and that is one important thing to recognize. We didn't have any major caste wars.
This is a very important point. The very, very important point you made, that we have no history of caste wars. And they somehow negotiated and figured it out.
The Marxist historian also agreed on that. Then, the other thing is, Dipankar Gupta, one of the renowned sociologists in Delhi, he said this whole fixed notion of caste is wrong. He says it's ossification. He says, if you go back to 16th century, many castes which are not, in the consideration, or they were all very major caste in 17th century.
Correct.
So it was always a flux actually. This rigid system came because of the British. They told that, and in 1891 census, the census commissioner was asked, where from you got this fourfold? He openly told, in Britain we have this senior civil servants, officers, clerks and peons. So this four category, we thought we will superimpose in India, that's all. Because they wanted to have in their own mirror image about, and another thing which many people are not realizing, British gave the enumerators the right to classify your caste, which was never ever done in any census anywhere in the world. It's not, the enumerator can't decide and they gave. So whenever a fellow is slightly with a moustache and well built, Kshatriya. And if he is sitting in a big pillow and not
Counting the
Vaishya. So this is how they classified. This whole classification itself is questionable. And till 1931 they continued it actually. The enumerators given the right is not a appropriate thing at all in the thing. And see, this is its own, if you go back in history, so many changes have come about, people don't realize actually. A lot of people have made changes in the caste system over a period of time. Most important is from within, for which you have to be within, not outside. If you are within means what, you should be perceived as a sincere person, very religious person, Saint Tukaram or so many others in the history, Maharashtra, as well as much later Gandhi, for instance. They could bring about changes. Not those who are, for instance, Gandhi was much more successful than Raja Ram Mohan Rai, who was outside. See, this is the important thing in our system. You have to be part of the system, and when you want to reform, people accept it actually. Okay, he is for instance, when the Madurai famous temple entry was made by Vaidyanathan, was one of the very major devotees and of Meenakshi. So it couldn't be done by any outsider, even though they took credit later and other thing. So its system has gone through several rounds of reforms, changes, and other things. Not from outside. Our social system is such that it has self-correcting, and anything you impose on, for instance, we have this 1963, if I remember correctly, Dowry Abolition Act. Everybody took procession and JJ and other thing. You tell me, has it been abolished? Because the society has got its own way of dealing with it. Similarly, we have very recent example of this. Public areas you cannot smoke in India. Very severe penalty and other thing. And you cannot chew pan also in any public place in India, as per law.
Yeah, but you check any wall, you will find out.
Any wall, actually, in some places in Bombay and Calcutta, I have seen, they have fixed Lord Ram, Ganesha and other thing, so that people don't spit on that wall.
So, if I may add to this question, the critical caste theory people have brought in minorities along with the oppressed. This idea, the Marxist idea that there are oppressors and oppressed. So, the Dalits are the oppressed, the minorities are also the oppressed, and the women are also the oppressed. So, now they have made this club of the oppressed, or we the oppressed are going to overthrow the whole Indian system, or dismantling Hindutva and dismantling India and all that. What do you say, or is your view on that? That now they've also brought in non-Dalits. Some of the minority people they brought in are actually rich people also. So, what do you say of that?
No more, this thing is okay for academic discussion, but in practice, lot of surveys, for instance, the Pangar Gupta as well as M.N. Srinivas, they point out, when you go to a person and talk to him and then ask him, you belong to the backward caste or you belong to the, he says no. We have the rulers. We come from Chandravamsa, Suryavamsa, another thing. In the last 40-50 years, we have been dethroned. We will again come back to, so they don't, for certificate another thing is okay, but they don't accept that they belong to backward or weaker caste or anything. This is very, very, no caste in India except that they are weaker caste and other thing, which is classified by the others.
So, even the term backward caste is a kind of a insult to be called a backward caste.
Only for the certification purposes. OBC classes, not castes. But that because the constitution doesn't classify caste as OBC.
If you see post-independence, Sardar Patel merged 543 samasthanams with India. Some of them willingly, some of them unwillingly. Hyderabad was one of the classic cases of unwillingness. But anyway, excluding the Muslim samasthanams, the kingdoms, if you count these 540, you will be surprised. All the 540 were ruled by the OBCs. Wow. See, India is the only country where the erstwhile rulers are now enjoying reservation as a backward. No other place actually. They were all rulers of some, smaller kingdom or something like that, bigger kingdom. And some of them were SC, ST also. But all of them were OBCs. Yeah. This nobody points out actually. All were OBC kings. Yeah.
No, the other thing I have also noticed, if you see the current political dispensation, even whether BJP or non-BJP government, practically all of them are headed by what we would today classify as OBCs, mostly. And the Prime Minister himself can broadly be classified in that group if you want to do that, though we are doing him a disservice by calling him that, because he's shown that he's far above in terms of capability than many others. But the fact is, this is what it is. And in the last years, though the West has been manufacturing atrocity literature, which you pointed out in your book, the fact is the level of atrocities against so-called Dalits has been far lower than before. In fact, they see that for the first time, they are actually getting a ruler who is not coming from a privileged elite. And in many of the states, it is the case. So they are actually merging into the broader stream of Dharma quietly without fanfare. But that's why what worries me about Harvard is that now they are trying to disrupt what is a natural coming together of various groups in India by trying to say, no, you are different, this is what the British did. Yeah, so the Oxford thing has now been taken over by Harvard. Can you say that how successful do you think they will be? They are trying to do that in US, but will they succeed here? Because
I'm worried because I'll tell you what, already these people are very well thought of. They have the World Economic Forum every Indian wants to go to, and World Economic Forum is an adjunct to Harvard. Everybody wants to go to the Kennedy School. Everybody wants to go to the Harvard Kennedy School, and the kids are going there. India is training its IS officers there. The Indian billionaires are funding it. So, the Harvard is all over. There's a Harvard presence in Mumbai. There's a Harvard in Delhi. Harvard is raising funds in rupee funds with tax deduction, which is allowed under the new NEP. And so India is funding Harvard. And Harvard has a footprint here. They are doing a lot of research in India, a lot of database gathering in India, a lot of classification, all of that stuff is going on in India. So Harvard is infiltrated in a very big way. It is pretty serious. And it's not only Harvard, there are others also. And they have their branches in Ashoka and Kriya University and all these Godrej labs and TIS and Azim Premji's foundation involved. So there is a ecosystem that they are head of a whole ecosystem. That is worrisome. Now, another dimension is you want to talk about patriarchy and the gender issue.
Yeah, but before that, there is also, like Rajiv ji said, there are other universities also competing for the space, like MIT. MIT has a whole economic research on India. MIT is not bringing technology to India; they're bringing this kind of woke economics to India. And over there now Gates comes from the side and starts funding Kriya University to find out female labor participation rates are very low, especially among upper caste women. Why is that? Because again, to show it's patriarchy. Now, why is maybe the woman has a choice and we should applaud that if they decide not to go to work and decide to put raising children and the being for the family as priority. I'm not saying one way or the other, but it can also be just that the Hindu woman is empowered to make such a choice. So, on one side, Gates funds this kind of research at Kriya. The other side, Gates goes to Ashoka and funds behavioral on a population level. How do you change behavior of masses? What can we do to change behavior? So, the end goal for Gates is to show that there is patriarchy and how can we use social media and other techniques to change behavior of Hindu women. And this is sort of dangerous because during the COVID, they also tried to change the behavior of the average Indian person to not believe in karma and not fate, but to accept whatever each one's lot is in life.
And Ayurvedic medicine was banned.
Ayurvedic medicine was banned, was hushed. In fact, people I was close to in the Ayurveda who actually did not use any PPE to treat 500-600 patients, essentially said they are not allowed to even say out loud that they are treating COVID patients, lest their licenses would be removed. They won't be allowed to practice. So this sort of WHO is actually controlling this. And who is behind WHO? China is behind WHO. Gates Foundation funds WHO. So these are all big global elites that are controlling our country. And so that's what I wanted to add.
So now that you brought up China, I thought we'll ask you two different questions. The first one is, why is it that we find our rich actually trying to ingratiate themselves with the Ivy League institutions by making massive donations which they wouldn't do here? And also, why is it that China has done the same thing, giving them lots of money, but the outcomes are quite different? Here we find that they are selling us snake oil on sociology and caste and things. There China is telling them what they should be saying about China. How is this different? How did China manage this differently compared to us? Are we the only jokers in town there?
So, in this book, we don't want to insult or insinuate our billionaires. In fact, we say that they have a right to spend the money the way they want. Right. And if they want to be woke, they have a right. There's no legal violation. If you can have any ideology you want, we're a free country. We just point out that there is a certain effect that is produced which is adverse to India, and their name, family name, and their money is being used. Now, if they want to do it and they say, well, that's what we believe, it's certainly their right. Now, what are they getting for it? We don't know, but they're certainly perceived, it's a lot of prestige. They are perceived as part of the global elite, the top tier of the whole world. They are sitting on committees and boards in some of these places. Their kids and family can get into admissions, and they get all the limelight. They become like another level of elite now. So that's some permutation of this. Maybe they're getting business deals out of it. We don't know exactly and it may be different for different cases. As far as the Chinese are concerned, the billionaires there who are giving money also on a big scale are aligned with national policy, aligned with the Communist Party of China. Some of them, some of the people they brought in we have shown have links with the Communist Party of China. So the Harvard has been infiltrated in a certain way. Ideologically, Chinese want STEM, and they want their kids to go and learn technology and bring it back, some of it by stealing also, whatever it is. But they don't want human rights. They don't want Harvard talking about Tibet, about Uyghur Muslims, about the lack of freedom in Hong Kong. Those topics are taboo. So when the Chinese are funding, it's not about humanities, and they're not wanting Harvard to tell them about politics in China and social rights and all that. But in India, the billionaires are funding this. There seems to be no coordination with the government. There seems to be no sense of how is it related to the Indian grand narrative. They're not saying this is our Indian grand narrative and we are going to want to fund something which is aligned with it. Yeah, the Chinese are very clear. So because China has clarity and a kind of a unity of purpose and strategic thinking, their results are very different from those of India.
But one subsequent question to that, actually, if you remember, I mean, the Ivy League and universities are keen on foreign money. But I think some years back, there was a case where I think some group affiliated to the Sangh, Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, wanted to do a chair on Hinduism, and it was rejected by them. I mean, some smaller university. So, like, why is it that some people want to return your money and some people are eager to give it to you as long as you pat their backs? I mean, what is the difference? Why are they returning money?
So, in that case, I know that Dharma Civilization Foundation was very crude. They did not understand the system. Okay. See, I will say one thing. Infinity Foundation funded chairs, funded visiting professorships twice at Harvard successfully, got our own man in. And we funded the Harvard Indology Roundtable for many years in a row. So we were able to crack how the system works, how to get your own people in, which those guys were not able to. But the reason we changed our mind is that we felt that it's a small drop in the ocean. The people we put in there are surrounded by such a large amount of people who are antagonistic that they can't really function. And unless we train a whole lot of people in India, unless we have Indians who are willing to go out and be the ambassadors, there's no point in trying to change, brainwash, or trying to somehow buy out people who are in Harvard. China was more successful because the level of funding was very huge compared to what we could do. The level of funding was so huge they could take a whole center and put one person after another and bring those Harvard guys to China and treat them right. Also, China has a blacklist and a whitelist. The white list is those who are welcome because they're saying the right things. Those Chinese, those Americans are welcome. Red carpet for them. And the black list is those who are not going to get in. And so and everybody else is the kind of grey list on a case-by-case basis. India doesn't have anything like that. India doesn't manage. So some of the people, the nastiest people, anti-India, are all the time coming and giving lectures, and right here in India, they're insulting India and nothing is done ever. I'm not promoting censorship, but I'm promoting some kind of vigilance. We should at least know what's going on.
So, Professor, he mentioned business, but don't you think that the Indian bureaucracy is equally compromised in terms of, policies are made at the level of government staff and politicians, right? But it's not just businessmen might give money to set up chairs, but the civil service, I'm told almost everybody has relatives studying there or seeking a job there or whatever. Don't you think that place is equally compromised?
Yeah. 100%. I would say not any hesitation. You see, the dream of every senior civil servant who is going to retire is to go and settle in UK or USA. Okay. With a green card or without, whatever is the thing. Plus, as you rightly said, all their kids and all their people are abroad only, not here. They have Plus, it's not a top secret. Many of them have got accumulated money in tax havens. So that also is used for the children's education. Many of them send their children on payment seat,
Right.
and it's not a very easy thing. At least these days, the payment seats are phenomenally high.
70.
Even within US, many are not able to reach them, but these people get that. So they are very, very clear, and they are very much obliged for the. The second thing is, which is very common. I'll tell you. I won't tell the name. Now it is slightly reduced, even among our ministers and senior civil servants. Quite some time before, I was in a room with a minister and the senior. Somebody told this BBC person has come. The way they ran outside, I was taken aback actually. Not for any of our Times of India or Hindustan Time, nobody will. But now it is relatively less as far as the media is concerned. But as far as the other thing is concerned, what you are telling, it is still there. If somebody has come from, white background is wait, they very hardly wait outside in the lounge or in the room, or others are sitting there like maybe for an hour or so with petitions. But these people walk in, right? So there is a sense of entitlement from them, and we also accept it, give rise to it. Among bureaucrats, I would definitely say good number of them are what I won't use the word compromised or anything, are fascinated by the thing. But I am given to understand of late, recently, maybe last couple of months or an year or two, it's slightly reducing because the conditions in those white countries are not very good. They find a lot of garbage in the road, and they are reminded about Bangalore and Bombay only again, and flooding, all these things are. So that attraction is slightly lower. Like there was a report telling IIT student, hardly nowadays, 15 to 20% only are interested in going abroad. Most of them are staying back, compared to a situation where nearly 90% were. So this is something which hopefully will,
Right.
but it's not very easy.
Right.
It's not going to be very easy. I would say bureaucrats are enormous even today. Almost all of them are enamored by the thing. And another thing is also there, including, there was a report 30% of the house residential area in London, real estate, is owned by Indians. Not Indians who are resident of UK, even other Indians actually. And many of them, I am given to understand, are our senior civil servants. So it's something which is there. I call it as our umbilical cords are tied to the West.
Right. So tell me, this Harvard has been able to suborn the media in many ways, right? In India especially. And even their own media takes a certain line no matter what you do, right? How do you think this is happening? How is it that the media, supposedly independent, the minute suppose some media house here seems to be openly supporting the government, they immediately say, oh, they've lost their independence. But nobody ever raises those kind of questions about media there. If they can go on slandering us, it doesn't make a difference.
When you look at how much of somebody's career, if he's a Harvard alumni, is owed to his Harvard brand name. They'll tell you, you go to people who got out of MBA or whatever, they will say that large part of what you get out of it is the networking. Because for life, you are in that league, and you can always pick up the phone anywhere in the world. You find Harvard alumni, they all stick together. It's like a caste. There's a Harvard caste system. You could think of it like that. We're a Harvard caste system. And so that the number of Indians who are Harvard alumni is now in the tens of thousands. Tens of thousands. Because you look at how many they've produced and how many places they are, and they've been doing this on a very big scale. Right now, the current population of people at Harvard, whether they're students, postdocs, faculty, is in the hundreds in the area of liberal arts, these kind of humanities kind of fields, it's not like 10, 20 professors. It's a very large number. And you look at in any year, how many of them, I'm including how many of them have gone for a conference there. They'll have Mittal Center will have a conference with so many people there. This Mahindra Center go on having talks by various people, etc., etc. So they have spent their money and their brand name and built a hierarchy of Indians, top level Indians, all the way down to some students. And these people are managing this. You don't need the Goras anymore. The Indians are doing all the work. They are very loyal to now. Big difference between the American approach and the British approach. The British had only their white guys at the top, and Indians were below a certain level. But the Americans have allowed even the top guys, Indians who are loyal to them. Let's say, I can't say compromise because that's their ideology, and they happen to believe in it. But people who are into Western universalism, Western theories, do not have any respect or sympathy for Indian ideas, are doing very well there.
So Macaulay's vision is being realized in America.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
So okay.
And in India.
And in India.
Yeah.
One additional point we were discussing on the caste issue. Many of the people I come across from US research, they do not know the current situation at all.
Yeah.
They are talking about, the elites are dominating in IITs. First of all, I asked them, do you know from 2008, there is a reservation system. 50% of IIT IIMs are reserved for various categories of people. From 2008, not today. 50%, and in Tamil Nadu it is 69%. It's a separate thing. And there are something like 23 IITs and IIMs today, not 3 or 4. Anyhow, last 5-6 years data, which I am putting it in my new edition of the book. Very interesting, the OBCs, which are expected to have 27.5%, because of the other group, 50 it is not expected to cross. OBCs are actually occupying some 70% of the open category seats. See, out of 100 seats, 50 seats are supposed to be open category, where the upper caste, or you may loosely call them, but all of them are occupied by in medical. If you take top 100 ranks, hardly 1 or 2 you will find upper caste.
So based on meritocracy, they are succeeding.
That's right.
And if they are succeeding,
the point
based
is
on,
most important, that cannot be set off against the OBC reservation.
Okay.
So they have this, plus they also have that. So this huge change has come about from 2008. I am talking about roughly of the order of some 14 years now. Many of these researchers are not even aware of it. They go on talking about,
So, my call to action to the viewers of this is, to the Harvard people, I'm appealing to Professor Homi K. Bhabha of the Mahindra Center, and I'm appealing to Professor Tarun Khanna, with all due respect. You are having all these events. You've never invited Professor Vaidyanathan, who has a counter position, and he's not some demagoguery kind of guy. He's got data, he's done research, he's done decades of research. I defy anyone in Harvard who's done as much research on these matters in India as he has done. I have never seen your people quote him, reference him, invite him. He should be chairing these kind of committees. He should be out there every year. You should have him there. So I would say that in order to live up to your reputation of free speech and liberalism and all that, next 5-10 years he should be a prominent speaker every single time, because look at how much he knows. And this is called cancel culture, which means that if you can't
rebut them,
you cannot. Out of their circuit. If you have the facts on your side and they can't put up with it because the ideology they want is different, then they will say that we ignore that he even exists.
Okay.
They cancel your existence.
But one thing, what I actually noticed is, so based on what he said, and which I have also said often, what the Suraj Yangades want is that, say, don't look at equality of opportunity, look at equality of outcomes.
Yes.
Now you actually got it. You got more than equality of outcomes, at least with one large category of non-upper castes. Right. Okay. Maybe Dalits are still some way off, but they'll take some time. I think their educational backwardness over a long period of the time has been so much that they have to take time to catch up. But they are sure to catch up because we have gone actually woke in our constitution far ahead of the storage young days of the world. Okay, if we are reserving 49% based not on pure merit, but for the sake of affirmative inclusion, what are these guys cribbing about? What do they want to do here? That's what I want to know.
So basically, this dismantling structures plays well into the guilt of the white people, liberal, white, left, ultra left, progressives, that, you know, I am this Indian and I am from a grievance background and I am oppressed. You know, and so I'll be your man there. I'll be the ambassador bringing your ideas to these downtrodden billion people. And so they fund such a guy. And so these are useful idiots. I see them as useful idiots, and they're serving as sepoys. Like in the British time, they were sepoys. So there's a huge ecosystem of that. The problem is not that Harvard is doing it or that they're able to get these middlemen, because there's all motives there. The problem is that people in India in high places have accepted it. This is the problem. The national education policy promotes liberalism, liberal arts, but they do not have Vedic liberal arts. We do not have an Indian approach to social sciences. It's not Dharma Shastra, Artha Shastra. It's not based on what are the theories we can, what are the ideas we can learn from Mahabharata. It's not that. It's Harvard liberal arts. If you look at the liberal arts that are coming to IITs, for example, they're usually Western trained people. So we've opened the floodgates. In the name of liberalization, we've opened the floodgates to what I call Western universalism, the Western ideologies being brought in. So our receptivity is the problem, not that they are trying to sell this.
One more point I want to mention. Many things we have done so naturally, we don't even claim credit for it. I'll tell you an example. In Atlanta, when I was there was some seminar or something about women and this. So I pointed out, look, when we got our constitution, women were given the voting rights without any single person talking about it. It was considered as natural, you know, that that's all. And Switzerland got their rights as late as 68 or 69 only. So, and you had suffragette movement, you had so much. We never had any issue or problem associated with that. They couldn't believe it actually. Did it really happen like that? And because they were never told some of these basic things. Like whenever I say that we never had slavery as our point of discussion, long time, 2000 years, slavery was not there. Mohammedan, Muslim, Islam had slavery. Obviously, Christianity has slavery, all of them. But we never had an idea of slavery at all. It's not a part of our culture or anything. No, what I want to stress is many of these things are, completely blocked or not talked about. When I told about women getting rights without, nobody actually wanted to have a discussion even about it. It was felt it's a standard, SO operating procedure type of thing. So this is something which I feel is very important in the context of dealing with some of these cancel fellows.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And more than that, I was just thinking, all these guys, your Ajanta Subramaniam, Suraj Yengde, and all these people, he called them, they are useful to that system for whatever, some uncomplimentary words, which Stalin used for, I think, leftists in Britain, I think. But the issue is this, don't these guys realize that it's when their utility ends, Harvard will have no use for them. At this point, they may be playing the rich man's game and doing whatever damage they need to do here. But at some point, will they actually be people who are not required? Don't you think they will dump them when they don't need them?
I think the scholarship, so the world of, if you look at grievance studies, for example, fat studies, like I said, fat studies is not about making a person healthy. It's about showcasing, obesity and being proud of obesity, those sorts of, it's an oppressed group. So it's that victimhood thing goes on. Now, so all these grievance studies departments, studies areas crop up every day. There are newer and newer studies in this whole umbrella under grievance studies. Now, the way that scholarship works is that you have a hunch and I have a hunch, and we are sort of motivated to come up with some social theory. Then we form a group of a group. We start publishing. You quote me, I refer you. Then we have a journal, and then anyone who disagrees with our viewpoint is not allowed. And this is just pseudoscience. It is essentially propaganda. So they form this kind of club, and then the scholarship is then built upon that. So whole area is built, and conferences are held, and so you've got an entire body of knowledge. And all these people like Ajanta Subramaniam and all that, they quote each other. They can't even come out. I know many people who tell me that I'm a professor here, and I can't come out because what will I do? You will be a pariah. You have actually also invested in this scholarship. So as an academic, how do you come out? You can't pull yourself out. So you have to sort of propagate it. Once you're in, it's like a treadmill. You just have to keep running. So the entire, and that's one of the reasons why he gets cancelled, because he is not part of it, and nobody wants, you can easily cancel them. So they have the other weapon too, so they can cancel. So they are also invested. So number one is that they are invested in this. So 20 years of this sort of academia in scholarship they've produced, they can't get out. They refer each other's work, and so it's a cool club. And they think it's going to be there forever because there are lots to dismantle, like the whole world, So they come newer, we have waves of Indology. So all this is scholarship. It has gone on for decades. So they just feel it'll continue.
No, but I think what he's doing is important, because there has to be a child who says the emperor has no clothes.
Exactly.
At some point everybody will realize that they've all been had. But I can't see that them building this superstructure on sand. But that's exactly what they build. Don't you think so?
Yeah, but see, the superstructures on sand have been built in history. A lot of superstructures. Ultimately, they dismantle, but look at all the billions or lot of the millions whose lives are destroyed in the process. I mean, you could argue that America could never capture and keep Afghanistan, but look at all the destruction done. You could say that about Vietnam. So the fact that ultimately the ultimate victory is denied to the oppressor, to the people who are, in my opinion, the true oppressors, that doesn't change the fact that so much havoc and damage happens. So their dismantling is causing problems for India. In the end, maybe they'll win, maybe they'll not win, but that's decades away. They have enough resources to keep at it for a while.
Don't you think this is the opposite of dharma? Dharma is to uphold and sustain, whereas this seems to be about how to destroy something or the other, in the assumption that something better might come out. I mean, isn't this theory actually leading to say, look, I'm going to destroy this because I don't agree with this, but I don't know what's going to come after that. I mean, you don't know after let's say you destroyed whatever wokeism has destroyed, whatever is there of caste or dharma or civilization or whatever. What do you think will come out of it? I mean, can you see something useful coming out of it? Because they don't have a vision, at least the old Marxism had some vision.
They are not interested in having a alternative or something.
This is about just venting against the whole world, is it?
See, I have a hypothesis. Declining powers are much more dangerous than rising powers. So you can't serve, you can't better, or you can. You see, I am a drowning man. I would rather pull you along with me. That's all. It's not for me to give you any. And you seem to be doing well. You are smiling, you are happy, and you are also growing. So this is, they have reached a situation where I don't think they are going to want to have any alternative. For instance, one example I will give. So much was written by New York Times, Washington Post, Economist about this Iraq having this chemical weapons. Everybody was against it, and everybody. Finally, what they couldn't find even one bottle of hydrochloric acid there. This is a fact actually, and there is no discussion after that. And Iraq is in such a messy situation today, if you ask. So the question is not replacing this with something else. It would have been there in the 50s, right? But not anymore.
It's the Pakistan syndrome, no? I know I will not succeed, but I'll see that you don't succeed.
Correct.
Huh? That is the, I think that's why they have friends with Pakistan maybe. They want to send them more F-16s.
But even in the US, no, Jagit, you have now people who have been cancelled. They've started a new university called the University of Austin. So there are these movements even within the US where people are collecting and saying, let's form another institution. Now, but that takes courage. I don't know if Indians will say, let's just forget about this whole system. Let's unplug from this system.
The pushback to your earlier question, which she's answering about the media power and all that, the pushback in America against this wokeism media is much more powerful than from India. So it's like we bought into this more, but there are Americans who are standing up against it. There are a lot of Americans who are creating their own alternatives to this. I am surprised that there is no alternative to this in India. I mean, there are a lot of rich people, they could have created their own platforms. There are some rinky-dinky little platforms, they're not that serious. But in the United States, there are a lot of big money going into those who've been cancelled, being funded and coming together and building an alternative and fighting back.
Yeah, the other thing is we thought when private universities like Ashoka and Kriya come up, we thought we'll have an alternative to the destructive tendencies of JNU's left. But we found that they are heading in the same direction. You know, how did this happen? I mean, the people funding it are not woke by any stretch of imagination in their personal lives.
In their own capitalism, they made their money not through work. They made their money as good old capitalists. So is this hush money? I'm wondering a question. Is it that the Indian ultra wealthy people are funding this leftist, progressive, Marxist driven ideology because it's some kind of hush money, mean I'll fund you, you leave me alone?
I don't think, because my whole point is, I think many of them are even not, aware of what is being taught or what is being, they don't do due diligence or something. Somebody who is...
But they wouldn't do that when they are taking over a new business, but when they want to start a...
That they won't do. There they want return. Here, somebody who is well known or somebody, he comes and asks, we are starting an idea, it's okay. I'll tell you an anecdote, believe me. Quite some years before, I was traveling to Delhi. Coincidentally or otherwise, one of the owners of one of the major newspaper barons was sitting there. I think his private aircraft was not working or whatever it is. Anyhow, he was sitting there and he was looking at, in those days they used to give newspapers and other. I was reading it. I casually asked him. We got introduced and he told, Professor, what are you doing? And other. Okay. I asked him what type of things they write in this. He had a hearty laugh. He says, you read all these things. He asked me. I told him that is what is, we, for just to publish some of these things, we sell biscuits, we sell chocolate like that, we sell this also. Why do you read all these things? Anyhow, Professor, since you asked, you see, this is a simple, he told me this, skin and spin business. We show as much skin as possible to sell, particularly women. And we spin on some of these stories and that's all. There is nothing. Listen, even though he is owner of that empire and other thing, he doesn't, same thing is happening. Many of them, for instance, I know one of the rich industrialists personally who has given some funds to Ashoka. I asked him, he told, is it? Are they doing those things? He asked me frankly. I told, yes, why are you financing them? You are one of the person I know and who...
So let me ask you this. Since this book is an audit, we are auditors, just like they hire Ernst & Young or Deloitte or somebody to do financial audit, to tell them what's going wrong and they pay them for it. Yeah. We, without getting paid or anything, we've done an audit about their philanthropy. We are doing a civilizational audit on their philanthropy. Don't you think they should thank us?
No, after my discussion with him and other thing, he is not anymore funding. Whatever he has funded, he cannot get it back.
So don't you think that means, but don't you think that means that the industrialists who are funding or who are thinking of funding should bring us in, listen to us, and they should take action? I mean, in a sense, we are doing an audit free of charge.
See, they are not doing any great due diligence or anything. Yeah. Some of the smaller businesses, I find, they at least go by the network and, that, these are connected with this organization. these are RSS oriented, these are this oriented, Vidya Bharati oriented, then they provide the funds. They may not do a great due diligence, but at least some of these I am talking about middle and small level people and other thing. But big businesses, they just and as I always say, for very big business in this matter, the right hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Actually, coming from the media business, I can tell you some anecdotes like this. I was working with the newspaper. Okay, so suddenly the proprietor came down and says, "Look, this fellow is running a scam. Why don't you guys investigate and do it?" But then I told him, I said, "Look, we have been careful about doing it because we thought he was, so he could be one of your advertisers, and also we are doing moderate stories, but we are not going all out to go and catch hold of him." He said, "No, do that." Then I found later that after 2-3 stories were done, which of course he was definitely half a scamster, but we wrote about it, since it was a lot to write about. Then he suddenly came back and said, "Now I think it's fine." He started giving us more ads. Now you can go easy on it. This is how the system works,
Correct.
especially in the regional media and a little bit in the English media.
So it's some kind of extortion. Extortion, which says that, look, in a subtle way, we are into this social justice, and your factories and your things have got a lot of social justice problems. But why don't you fund us? Why don't you fund us through Harvard, and they'll give us funding and all that, and you'll be considered a good guy. You are funding social justice programs, and so we think that such a person should get good ESG rating, and we leave you alone. There may be a subtle element of that. Could be subtle element of that.
Yes, and also the advantage you get is, like, not only does he go easy on you, he might go and attack your competitor, so which also helps you.
Yeah. Why not? Good.
So
That's a good point.
So sooner or later somebody or the other gets into this. Okay, last two things. It always surprised me why people, just taking off from the business side of things where he said, these business people are not woke by any stretch of imagination in their private lives. They do their daily puja, they have their this thing, they go and even have goshalas on the side, this, all kinds of things, right? On the other hand, they're funding people to say, okay, you must eat beef and this and that, who say, oh, this is right to eat, beef must be central to this thing, otherwise it's an atrocity on some minorities or something like that. The same fellow who privately is behaving in a different way is actually publicly funding something that he completely does not actually believe in. How do you explain this schizophrenia?
I think with the new ESG movement that Rajiv ji briefly talked about, so a company now has a fiduciary responsibility not just to make profits as it should be, but they also should consider environmental issues, social justice and governance. And this is coming from the West. Now companies are becoming the policemen. They're becoming the judges and the policemen and the funders of all these things, which is actually a government function. Who is the company to say what is environmental loss? So tomorrow if you do a homum, it might be considered carbon emitting, right? And then if you should have X number of Dalits and this and that on your board, and giving it sort of a token thing. Now, and that's sort of insulting to the Dalit. Instead of truly empowering somebody, right? You're sort of giving token positions, but that apart. And then the biggest part is social justice. And this is very, very dangerous because you're bringing in all this wokeism into the corporate world. So we feature Godrej, this whole LGBTQ thing, and we support equal rights and respect for all communities, right? But now, the Godrej Culture Lab is a proponent of all kinds of Western woke alphabet soup of LGBTQ stuff. And they're bringing in all these ideas. And within that, they will insert Kashmir separatism, all of that inside these things. So there is clearly, the corporates are stepping out of their bounds of just doing business. Now, you're asking, why are they doing this? No, you need an ESG rating. And now your stock price, everything is going to be, based on your ESG score, which is a rubric based on wokeism. Now, if you don't follow those practices, your ESG rating is down. Now, you can say, okay, even as a private company, in fact, Omidyar and Rockefeller Foundation have started this non-profit to help private companies comply with ESG. And so you can say, I'm a private company, I don't care. Now tomorrow you want insurance. They will look at your ESG and they say, you're not rated, we can't give you insurance as a business. Tomorrow you want logistics, something that you produce, you has to be transported. Amazon can tell you, sorry, we don't want to sell you on Amazon platform. They can cancel you. So this cancellation is everywhere. So you have to be ESG compliant. And the corporates and people like Ernst & Young and all these people are making money out of it. Because they get, they get to audit you for ESG compliance. So it's a merrymaking. Everybody makes money. The corporates, comply. It's hush money to, they use wokeism to sort of say, leave us alone, we will be ESG compliant. And then the people who lose are the monkeys in the middle, like the middle class, who will.
So essentially, corporates are entering the business of governance,
Exactly.
setting their own policy goals, social goals, and actually doing everything except do the main thing that they're supposed to do,
Right.
which is to produce goods of a good quality which somebody wants to buy. Yeah, and of course, make sure that the shareholder is also taken care of. So their idea now is that they should run the country, they should run society.
That's why you see the word like, stakeholder capitalism.
Yeah.
And that is what oligarchy is. Oligarchy is not just Russian oligarchs, but now you're going to see American, Indian oligarchs who are ultra wealthy people, kind of indirectly behind the scenes pulling the strings of government, making policies through all these think tanks and all that, and then the government just puts it through because these guys have so much funding power.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned in your book, that some of these big multinational corporations actually are larger than at least 100 countries in the world in terms of their market capitalization or even sales turnover. So they are as good as states within a state, or if not the state, rather than the state.
But Jaggi, the other important point is, right, through this ESG, there is religion coming. Corporate place is going to become a place for evangelism, because there are organizations, Religious Freedom Foundation, things like that comes out of WEF, which are essentially, they have a ready index, religious diversity and equity index. So they want everybody in a company to have a right to express their religious identity.
Correct.
So the corporations have to provide that space. So who loses out, you tell me? If I'm a Christian or a Muslim, I go proselytize, and the company has to provide a space for it.
So only one religion has to be dismantled and not included in this?
Exactly.
Huh? Well, what a wonderful thing. I think we have a lot of work to do, both as a country and a society. And I hope we read this book carefully and see what we need to do rather than just read it and put it away. Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you
so
very
much
much
for your time.
Thank you, everybody. Namaste.
Dr.
Namaste.
Vaidyanathan.
Great talk.
Jaggi.
Great talk.
Yeah, thank you.